This author wrote a novel that 12 different editors at various publishing houses wanted to acquire, and it will remind you what it feels like to be young and in love. Ebony LaDelle is the author of Love Radio, a novel from Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. It's one of those novels that a lot of us wanted to read immediately because it has an irresistible plot. A 17-year-old boy named Prince has his own segment on Detroit's popular hip-hop show, Love Radio, offering his advice on love and relationships. He falls for an ambitious young writer named Danielle who isn't into romance, and he asks her to give him 3 dates to change her mind. The result is a thoroughly entertaining and authentic story about teenagers learning to express themselves in ways they never have before. Ebony LaDelle, welcome. Tell me something. How is it possible that you were able to make me feel like a teenager again? How did you remember all of this?
You know, it's funny. I actually have my journals from when I was 15. And so I was incredibly shy, had a lot of emotions, but I didn't really know how to articulate them. And so I would just write everything in these journals. And, you know, I had these dreams for myself, but I didn't know where to start, how I would go about doing them. And I think that really helped inform my writing. A lot of Danielle, I have to say, is a lot of me.
Well, I have to say that I really related to Prince. So I felt like you definitely got the guy character right too. And when he says that trying to figure out Danielle is like trying to figure out quantum physics, I completely knew what he was talking about. So let me ask you something. You described Love Radio as a love story about Detroit. And I'm wondering, why does Detroit inspire you?
I grew up there. I grew up right outside of Detroit until I was 14. I just have so many fond memories of the city. It is really like a time capsule of Black America, and it really influenced and shaped who I am. But also, you know, working in the industry for about a decade, I felt like I hadn't really seen books that showed the positive sides of Detroit. I kept waiting for like acquisitions to read a book about like Detroit in the way that I wanted to see it. And I realized more and more that like I should just write it.
And when you were growing up, did you feel that there were books about Black love for you?
And no, I thought that I didn't, like as an adult, I was just like, oh, maybe I didn't like romance back in the day. But then when I actually did some research and looked it up, I was like, oh no, there actually wasn't romance for a Black teenage girl back in the day. But that's why so much of the book is influenced by movies, because growing up, I used to watch the Black romance movies and be in love with them because that was the closest thing I had to like YA Black romance books. And so I'm thrilled that there are so many more YA romance books for Black teenagers to read now, because we really didn't have them growing up. And I feel like a lot of writers have been inspired to write them because of that very reason.
And you also did some research on songs, I assume. How did you curate your song list in this book?
Just growing up, I heard music all the time. Like I knew lyrics before I knew how to like, you know, converse. And so I think it's just pulling songs from my Rolodex. And then I also like put songs to real life experiences. So some of those songs that are at like Northland Skating Rink, those are songs that I actually heard when I would go skating at Northland Skating Rink.
Well, now, one of the other things I wanted to ask you is that Danny writes a really beautiful letter to Toni Morrison in this book. And then later in the novel, when she's talking to her dad, she talks about how a lot of these authors really kept her going and that they'd experienced pain that she never even imagined. I'm just wondering, who are some of those authors for you?
I mean, Toni Morrison, you know, and I use her as an example of this Black woman who was in publishing at a time when it was much harder to be in publishing than it was for me. And yet she was able to really stay true to herself and her voice and what she wanted and what was important to her. You know, she was able to edit some phenomenal books by Black writers and also create, you know, change the landscape of how, you know, Black writers are able to publish books in general. And so she is definitely an idol in many ways than one for me.
Well, I think that she would have been quite impressed by this debut, and congratulations. It is a book that is going to touch a lot of people and make a lot of people feel great. So congratulations. And that is the word according to Karp.